The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with a heavy silence as the lights dimmed and the enormous screens above the delegates glowed. Thousands of alien eyes, some wide and round, others narrow and sharp, were fixed on the center, the stage where a decision was about to be made. The decision was not about trade, not about borders, but about the survival of one small blue world. Earth stood accused. Billions of human lives now balanced on the next vote. A voice boomed across the chamber, translated into every tongue. It belonged to Chancellor Varric, a tall, scaled figure with silver eyes. "We are gathered to decide the fate of the humans," he declared. "They have shown themselves violent. They wage endless wars. Their weapons scar their own world. Can such a species be trusted to join the stars? Or must they be contained, cut off, and left to wither before they destroy more than themselves?" His words echoed, and many nodded in agreement. The chamber's tiers were filled with delegates, each representing a different world of the council. Some were insect-like, their antennae twitching. Others were covered in feathers or armored plates. All carried authority, all held power. One by one, they spoke of human aggression. A delegate with translucent skin lifted her hands. "Their history is blood," she said. "Every century, they find new ways to kill. If they are allowed to expand, their violence will reach us all." Another alien with many eyes added, "Humans are unpredictable. They fight not only enemies, but even themselves. What future can such chaos bring to the galaxy?" Images appeared on the screens above. They showed Earth's wars, armies clashing, cities burning, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. Gasps and hisses filled the chamber as the council watched the endless stream of violence. Each picture was like a nail hammered into Earth's coffin. "This," said Chancellor Varric, pointing at the screen as proof, "the humans are a doomed race, or doom will bring others down with them if we do not act." But not all were convinced. A smaller voice rose, shaky but determined. "Yet they also build," said a delegate, with wings folded tight against her back. "Look closer, and you will see more than war. You will see resilience." Her words were quickly drowned out by louder voices demanding judgment. The chamber seemed to lean toward one conclusion. Humanity must be condemned. In the far corner, unnoticed by most, sat a man who was not meant to be there. He was not a diplomat, not a warrior, not even a scientist. He wore no fine robes or shining armor. His clothes were plain, worn from work under the sun. His hands were rough and his eyes steady. He was a farmer from Earth, brought along only because he had been part of a small trade deal, a quiet background figure in the delegation. He had not spoken once since arriving, and no one expected him to. To the council, he was invisible. Now, the moment of judgment came. The Chancellor raised his staff and announced, "Delegates, prepare to vote. The question is clear. Dare. Shall Earth be declared doomed and barred from the stars forever?" A wave of motion rippled through the chamber as delegates raised their hands or appendages. One after another, the votes went against Earth. Row by row, the screen filled with red marks. The verdict seemed certain. The humans were finished. As the farmer watched, his chest tightened. He thought of his village back home, the fields that needed tending, the crops that bent with the wind but never broke. He remembered neighbors helping each other after storms, sharing food when harvests were poor. He thought of his children, and their small hands planting seeds in the soil. Was this what the galaxy believed deserved to die out? His jaw tightened. For the first time since the session began, he stood. The sight was strange enough to make a few nearby delegates glance. His way. The farmer's voice was not trained for great halls, but it carried because of its simplicity. "You have seen our wars," he said, his words slow, his accent thick. "But you have not seen our fields. You have not seen what we build after." The fires the chamber stirred. Some laughed softly at the idea of a common man speaking in the council. Others leaned forward, curious despite themselves. Chancellor Varric frowned. "Who allowed this?" demanded, but the farmer did not stop. He lifted his calloused hand, still marked by years of working the soil. "I am no soldier," he said. "I only know the land. And I know that when the earth is dry, we dig deeper for water. When storms destroy our crops, we plant again. When the soil is poisoned, we learn to heal it. That is who we are. That is why we live. Its words were plain without flourish, but they carried a weight no polished speech could match. A hush spread through the chamber. For the first time, the council saw not images of bombs and battles, but the picture of humanity's survival. The farmer's eyes swept across the alien faces. "Call us violent if you wish," he said, "but do not call us doomed. We know how to start again. We always start again." Silence stretched. The chancellor lowered his staff, uncertain. Some delegates whispered to one another. A few looked troubled. The vote had not yet closed. The farmer had not changed the outcome, not yet. But his simple defiance, his refusal to remain silent, had shaken the room. As the screen froze on the half-finished tally, the chamber hung in suspense. The verdict of Earth was no longer simple, and for the first time, a single farmer stood against the will of the stars. The chamber was restless after the farmer's words. Many delegates shifted in their seats, uneasy, their voices murmuring in dozens of alien tongues. The chancellor's staff struck the floor 3 times, and the sound echoed like thunder. "Order," he demanded, though his silver eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. The council had expected a swift decision, but the strange human's words had cracked the certainty of their judgment. A sharp laugh cut through the silence. It came from Senator Dravik, a massive creature with ridged horns and a sneer carved across his face. "Is this what Earth sends to defend itself? A dirt digger?" he said loudly, his voice dripping with scorn. "What can a man who plays in soil teach the stars about survival?" The council chamber erupted with cruel chuckles and whispers. Some nodded in agreement, eager to mock the human. The farmer stood still, his back straight, his face calm, letting the insults wash over him like rain on stone. When he spoke again, his words were steady, not polished or decorated, but clear. "You laugh at me because I worked the land," he said, looking at the rows of alien faces. "But every living being depends on the land. Even the stars in this chamber cannot eat metal or drink fire. You eat food that comes from the soil, even if your hands have never touched it. Without farmers, there is nothing." The laughter faltered. Some sneers froze, caught by the raw truth in his voice. The farmer took a slow step forward, his boots sounding small in the grand hall, but every ear turned toward him. "You say we are doomed because we fight? Yes, we fight. But fighting is not all we are. When storms flatten our homes, we build them again. When the ground grows dry, we find water hidden deep below. We take lifeless soil and make it grow green. That is who we are." His words were simple, like a story told around a fire, but they sank deep into the hearts of those who listened. A delegate with feathered wings leaned forward, her eyes shining. "He speaks truth," she said quietly. "I have visited Earth. I saw fields rising from land burned black by war. I saw green, where there had been only ash." Others began to murmur, uncertain. They had only seen the dark images of Earth's past shown by the chancellor. Now they imagined a different picture, one of endurance, of renewal. But not everyone was moved. Senator Dravik slammed his heavy fist against the table. "Do not be fooled by this peasant's words," he roared. "He is clever, but cleverness cannot hide what humans are. They destroy, they consume, they spread like fire. If they grow into the stars, they will burn everything." Well, his voice was met with agreement from several others who feared human expansion. The chamber divided, half listening to the farmer with new respect, half glaring at him with suspicion. The chancellor raised his hand, calling for silence once more. "This council is not a place for stories of soil and storms," he said coldly. "The evidence of human violence is clear. The farmer's words may sound poetic, but they cannot erase centuries of blood." His staff struck the floor again, a signal that the vote would soon resume. Yet something had shifted. The delegates were no longer united in their condemnation. For the first time, doubt filled the room. The farmer could feel it, a crack in the wall built against his people. He held on to it like a man holding on to a seed, knowing it might one day grow. Later, in the corridors of the council, whispers followed him. Some delegates approached quietly, asking him about Earth's resilience. Others watched him with narrowed eyes, speaking in hushed tones, plotting. As he walked back to his quarters, he felt eyes on him, some curious, some hostile. He was no longer invisible. That night, as he sat alone in the dim light of his chamber, a small device flickered to life on his desk. A message appeared. Its words carved by an unseen hand. "You must not speak again. If you do, Earth will burn faster." The farmer read the threat in silence. He thought of his fields back home, where pests would sometimes attack the crops. He had learned that fear never saved the harvest, only courage did. He closed the message, his face calm, though his heart beat heavy in his chest. The council had tried to laugh at him, to dismiss him, but he had seen the change in their eyes. For the first time, the fate of Earth was not sealed. For the first time, he understood that his voice carried more weight than he had ever imagined. The next session would decide whether he would be silenced or whether his words could grow strong enough to change the galaxy. The farmer woke in the middle of the night to a strange sound. At first, he thought it was only the hum of the station's engines, steady and low like the wind through trees. But then he noticed the light. Faint glow spread across the wall of his chamber. Words burned into the surface by some sharp tool. His heart tightened as he read them. "Leave or Earth burns faster." The letters were jagged, carved with anger. For a long moment he sat in silence, staring at the message. Then he reached out and touched the rough edges of the marks. They were real. Someone wanted him gone. The farmer thought of his fields back home, of nights when pests swarmed across his crops. He remembered how, as a boy, he had wanted to run and hide. His father had stopped him with only a hand on his shoulder. "If you run," his father had said, "the pests win. If you stay, the harvest lives." Now, far away from Earth, the farmer felt the same choice pressing on him. He could walk away, or he could stay and fight for something greater than a field of grain. He drew a slow breath. He would not leave. When morning came, the council chamber filled again. Delegates whispered, their voices sharper than before. The farmer could see suspicion in their eyes. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with open dislike. He said nothing. He only listened as arguments continued. "Humans cannot be trusted," one senator declared. "Their history proves it," another added. "They are too dangerous." To join the stars. The chorus of condemnation returned, but it did not sound as strong as before. Seeds of doubt had been planted. During a recess, the farmer walked the long stone corridors of the council building. Shadows stretched along the walls. Twice he noticed shapes moving behind him, disappearing when he turned his head. His hand clenched into a fist. He was being followed. Still he did not rush. He walked with the same calm steps he took in his fields, steady, unhurried, as if nothing could shake him. At the edge of the hall, a soft voice called out, "Human." The farmer turned. A thin alien figure stood there, scales gleaming faintly under the lights. Her eyes were dark, her hands trembling. She was one of the council members who had remained silent in the debates. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Your words yesterday, they were not lies, were they?" The farmer shook his head slowly. "No lies, only the truth of my people." She glanced around nervously before pressing something small and cold into his hand. "Keep this hidden. It is proof that not all the council wants you doomed." Then she hurried away before he could ask more. The farmer opened his palm. It was a crystal shard, glowing faintly with stored data. I slipped it into his pocket. His face unchanged, though his heart raced. Someone believed him. Someone wanted the truth to come out. That night the farmer sat alone again. The warning still burned on his wall, but now he also had the shard, heavy with meaning. He turned it over in his hand and thought of the council chamber, of the many eyes watching, some waiting for him to fail, others silently hoping he would. Not he thought of his children, planting seeds in soil that might not grow, planting anyway, because hope was stronger than fear. He closed his hand around the shard. He knew the danger was real. He knew the threats would not stop. But he also knew this: when the ground is poisoned, you do not abandon it. You heal it. And when a voice is silenced, you speak louder. The farmer lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling of his chamber. He was only one man, a farmer with rough hands and simple words. But for the first time, he understood that the fate of Earth rested not with generals or leaders, but with him. The council would meet again tomorrow, and when they did, he would not remain silent. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes watched him. Somewhere in the council, plots moved like snakes through tall grass. But the farmer was ready. He had faced storms before, and he would face this one. The pests were coming, but he would not let the harvest die. The council chamber was tense the next morning. Delegates filled their seats, wings folding, tails twitching, antennae quivering. The air was thick with suspicion, as if every being present sensed something about to break. The chancellor raised his staff to begin the session, but before he could speak, the farmer stood. His plain clothes and rough hands looked out of place among the jeweled robes and shining armor of the stars. Yet all eyes turned to him. Slowly, carefully, he drew the crystal shard from his pocket and held it up for all to see. This was given. To me, he said, his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. You have seen only half the truth about Earth. It is time you see the rest. He stepped toward the center, ignoring the sharp protests from the chancellor. The council must see not just our wars, but our survival. The crystal flared. To life in the projector, the chamber filled with images. Not bombs, not battles, but rebuilding. Cities rising again from rubble. Neighbors helping one another after storms. Farmers planting in soil blackened by fire. Children laughing in villages that had been destroyed only years before. The pictures moved like a river, flowing across centuries of struggle and renewal. Hush swept through the hall. Delegates leaned forward, their eyes wide. The farmer's voice carried with the images. This is what you were not shown. Yes, we fight, we fall, but we rise again. We sow before we reap, mend what is broken. Where others see ruin, we see the start of something new. His words were plain, but in the silence they felt stronger than the grand speeches of the senators. One delegate with a mane of golden fur stood, his voice shaking. I was told humanity only destroyed, but here I see healing. Another, with skin that shimmered like glass, whispered, perhaps we were misled. Perhaps the vote was never meant to be fair. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Seeds of doubt grew into questions, questions into arguments, but not all welcomed. The truth. Senator Dravik rose to his full height, horns gleaming under the lights. His voice roared like a storm. Lies.
This is manipulation.
Tricks to hide their bloodlust. His fist slammed the table, rattling it. Do not be fooled by a farmer's stories. Others shouted with him, their voices clashing with those now moved by what they had seen. The chamber dissolved into chaos, voices rising, hands slamming, the future of Earth hanging in the balance. The farmer stood firm in the center, his eyes meeting the anger of those who wanted him silent. You can shout at me, he said simply, but you cannot shout away the truth. We are not doomed. We are alive. And we will remain alive. His calm defiance cut through the noise, drawing attention back to him. For a moment, it seemed he might hold the chamber together. Then the floor shook. A deafening blast thundered through the chamber. Light flashed, heat roared, and smoke filled the air. Delegates screamed, scrambling from their seats. Some collapsed, others tried to shield themselves with their wings or shells. The crystal projector shattered into fragments, alarms shrieked. As guards rushed into the chaos, the farmer was thrown to the ground, his ears ringing, but he forced himself up, coughing through the smoke. Around him, the chamber was broken, filled with panic and fear. Somewhere in the chaos, he heard shouts. It was an attack. Someone wants him silenced. The farmer pressed his hand against the floor to steady himself, his eyes narrowing. He had seen storms tear through his village, flattening everything in their path. This felt the same a force meant to destroy. But storms never lasted forever, and neither would this. Through the haze of smoke, he saw alien delegates looking at him, some with fear, some with trust. The truth had been revealed, and those who wanted to bury it had shown their hand with violence. The farmer wiped the dust from his face and stood taller, refusing to be broken. The chamber was no longer a place of calm debate. It had become a battlefield of ideas, of lies and truth, of fear and hope. And in the heart of that battlefield stood one man, a simple farmer, carrying the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders. The council had tried to silence him. The shadows had tried to erase him.
Ow.
But now, after the blast, his voice would carry even further. The fight was no longer only about Earth's fate. It was about whether the galaxy itself could face the truth. Smoke rolled through the council chamber like a heavy fog. Cries of fear and anger filled the vast hall as guards rushed in, their weapons drawn, their voices barking orders in dozens of alien tongues. The blast had torn through the chamber's floor, leaving scorch marks and broken stone. Delegates stumbled over shattered seats and fallen banners, their robes singed, their wings and tails trembling. In the middle of the chaos, the farmer coughed, dust clinging to his face, his chest aching from the shock. Yet he stood, his rough hands steady as he lifted a fallen beam off a delegate who lay pinned beneath it. The alien gasped in surprise. As the farmer pulled him free, his strength born not from training, but from years of lifting and carrying in the fields. Others began to notice. While guards shouted and senators argued, the farmer was moving through the smoke, helping those who could not rise, guiding the frightened toward safety. His voice was calm, cutting through the panic like a steady wind. "This way," he said again and again. "Stay close. Do not fear." He pulled a feathered delegate from the wreckage, steadied another who was blinded by dust, and carried a wounded child of one alien species in his arms until he found the parents in the crowd. By the time the smoke began to clear, dozens of eyes were fixed on him. He was not a soldier or a hero in shining armor, but in the moment of disaster, he had been the only steady hand. The chamber quieted, and even the chancellor, his staff raised high, could not ignore the silence. All waited to see what the farmer would say. He stood tall, his plainclothes torn, his face streaked with soot. His voice was tired but firm. "You see what happened?" he said, turning slowly so all could hear him. Someone tried to silence the truth with fire. Someone feared what you saw. His gaze swept across the hall, and for once, none dared laugh at him. When storms destroy our fields on Earth, we do not run. We plant again. When fire burns our homes, we build stronger walls. When we lose, we rise. This is what it means to be human. You may call us violent, you may call us reckless, but do not call us doomed. The farmer stepped forward, his eyes meeting those of the chancellor, of Senator Dravik, of every delegate still standing. A farmer plants seeds he may never see grow. He trusts the soil, the sun, and the rain. That is what humanity is. We plant even when the ground is broken. We plant even when hope is small. Because one day something will grow. That is our strength. For a long moment, silence ruled the chamber. Then slowly, a single delegate began to clap, his scaled hands striking together. Another followed, then another, until the sound echoed through the hall. Some remained unmoved, glaring with narrowed eyes, but many more joined, their applause rising until it drowned the lingering cries of fear. Senator Dravik roared above the noise. "This is trickery. Do not let the farmers' tales blind you. Humanity is dangerous, and their future will be fire for all worlds." But his words no longer carried the same weight. Too many had seen the farmer act with courage. Too many had felt the pull of his simple truth. The chancellor struck the floor with his staff, his silver eyes flashing. "Enough," he commanded. The chamber fell silent again. The council will vote once more. The choice is clear. Shall Earth be cast out as doomed, or shall Earth be given a place among the stars? The farmer did not move. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He had said all he could. He had planted the seed. Now he would wait to see if it grew. As the delegates prepared to raise their hands, the air hung heavy with suspense. The future of Earth rested not on armies, not on fleets, not on rulers, but on the words and courage of a single farmer who refused to be silent. The chamber brimmed with tension as the vote began. The chamber was silent as the chancellor lifted his staff. Smoke still clung to the broken walls, and scorch marks scarred the floor, but every delegate had returned to their seat. The moment had come. Billions of lives waited on the edge of this decision. Farmer stood in the center, his clothes torn, his face marked with ash, yet his back was straight. He did not speak now. He had already said all that needed saying. The Chancellor's voice rang out, clear and sharp. Delegates of the Council, cast your vote. Earth stands accused. Will humanity be declared doomed and barred from the stars, or will they be recognized as part of our future? He raised his staff high, and the screen behind him lit up, ready to record the votes. At once, hands and claws and wings lifted across the tiers. The first rows voted against Earth. Red marks filled the screen quickly, just as they had before. The farmer's heart pounded, but he kept his eyes steady, watching. More red appeared. It seemed certain. Galaxy would condemn humanity once more. Then it happened. Delegate with shimmering glass-like skin hesitated. Her hand hovered, then lowered. Instead, she pressed green. A small mark of support for Earth appeared on the screen. A ripple of surprise swept through the chamber. Another delegate followed, the feathered one who had once spoken of Earth's resilience. Then the scaled senator who had given the crystal raised his voice. I vote for life, not silence. His hand pressed green. One by one, more began to change. The screen shifted. What had been almost fully red began to fill with green. A tide was turning, slow but unstoppable. Shouts rose from those still against Earth, calling the others fools, warning of danger. Smaller than before. The farmer closed his eyes for a brief moment. He thought of his children planting seeds in soil they could not be sure would sprout. He thought of the storms that had broken his fields, the years when harvests had failed, the times when hope seemed too small to keep. Yet always something had grown. Out! Here in the council, something was growing again. At last, the final votes were cast. The screen flashed, numbers locking into place. The Chancellor's staff trembled slightly in his hand as he read the result. His voice, though stern, could not hide the shock. By decision of the Galactic Council, Earth is not declared doomed. Humanity is recognized as vital to the future of the stars. The chamber erupted. Some cheered, their voices rising like a storm of joy. Others hissed and shouted in anger, furious at the outcome. But none could change it. The vote was final. Earth had been saved. The farmer stood still as the chaos swirled around him. Delegates came to him, some to thank him, some to glare in silence. He only nodded, his expression calm. He had not won by force or by clever tricks. He had won by speaking plainly, by showing the truth of his people. When the session ended, the farmer walked out of the great chamber. Corridors still smelled of smoke, and the walls still bore scars of the blast. Yet his steps were steady, each one lighter than the last. Outside, through the station's great windows, he saw the endless stars. For the first time, they no longer seemed distant or hostile. They seemed open, waiting. He thought of his fields. Back on Earth, of the soil under his boots, and the quiet mornings when the sun rose over green rows. He thought of how he would tell his neighbors what had happened. He would not speak of politics or battles. He would tell them the truth in the only way a farmer could. I only did what we always do. I planted hope, and it grew. And somewhere, across the galaxy, leaders and senators would remember the day the fate of Earth had been changed not by armies, not by kings, but by a single farmer who refused to be silent.